All right, you are welcome once again. My name is Ebenezer Akins, IELTS Ghana Ambassador and the International Affairs Director of IELTS International. Currently, we're operating in 40 plus countries, and we are hoping to grow and then get more branches in other countries. This is the 8th international webinar of the International English Language Teachers Association. Thank you all for coming. So permit me to introduce to you our speaker for today. She's a wonderful person from Mexico. And I got to know Miss Gina through ICLT, International Chamber of Language Teachers. So give me 1 minute to introduce to you our dear speaker for today. All right. So Miss Gina is an applied linguist, translator, and English teacher. For the past 8 years, she has worked with both children and adults in the educational process, specializing in business English, conversational English, pronunciation, and creative writing. She's also a voice actress and has worked with HBO, Cartoon Network, and several institutions in Mexico and the USA. Her volunteer work as a coordinator in the Educational Center Foundation, Sofia, Mexico, helps her channel her desire to help others grow through theater, public speaking, and learning the philosophy of life. Let's give a virtual applause as we welcome to the floor our speaker for today's session, Miss Gina.
Thank you very much, Teacher Ebenezer, for that lovely introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on the place of the planet where you're watching from. I am so honored to be here today with you. Thank you especially for this warm welcome to the International English Language Teachers Association from Ghana. It's the first time that I am talking to people from this part of the world, and I am truly happy to be able to do that today. So if I may share my screen, we'll begin and let's talk a little bit about empathy. All right, so, sorry. Let me just share this part of my screen. There you go. Okay. Well, I decided to talk about empathy because normally when we are in workshops of English, when we try to develop our abilities as language teachers, there are always this talks and these workshops about how to develop skills for the 21st century, how to teach grammar, how to teach everything, no? And it's always more and more and more and more things that we have to be able to do to become better professionals, no? And I truly appreciate you guys being here, especially because I know that as language teachers, there is always something that needs to be done. Now, there is always exercises that we need to finish. There are always lesson plans that need to be finished. We have to plan meetings. There's always paperwork that is left behind. And of course, we have a life outside of the classroom. We have our family, we have friends. We try to have some sort of exercise and healthy life. And well, let's just face it, the life of language teachers and teachers in general is that we try to be a little bit like orchestra men and women. We always try to do everything by ourselves. We try to be there as teachers, but supporters, but friends. We are always trying to be the overachievers of our work, handling everything from giving the class, planning the class, talking to parents, talking to our peers, talking to our supervisors, and everything and everyone, right? And the truth is that a teacher life can be very stressful. because we're always trying to do more. We're always trying to be better. And it's not only the work in the classroom, but it's the work that is done outside the classroom that is the most stressful, right? We not only handle our academic work, but we face a lot of emotional work. We have to be facing a lot of emotional situations pretty much every single day. And we have a lot of time, we need to have a lot of time to handle everything that is not teaching, even though we are teachers, right? And teaching is hard enough as it is, but handling everything else that is not teaching is to learn how to handle our emotions. And that's a little bit of what we're going to be talking about today. So what exactly are emotions? Emotions are more or less spontaneous reactions that we have to specific situations, to specific significant situations. Emotions can last a few seconds, or they can last many hours. They can change rapidly, or they can stay there. They're quite inconsistent, no? And they are created after something happens. Yes, something appears in my field of conscience, and it makes me react in a certain way. So if we look at it very objectively, emotions are tools, like a pencil or like my skills. Emotions are tools that help me understand my perception about the world and communicate that perception to others. How I am perceiving other people and how I am perceiving something that I am doing. So when I started teaching, I began noticing this kind of extra factors that went into teaching. I have been an English teacher for the past 8 years. And when I started doing my master's in applied linguistics, I decided to do a study about how all of these things that were not exactly teaching affected our work as teachers. So I ran into this lovely term called emotional ecology. Emotional ecology is the study of how emotional knowledge is built and is developed in the actors and contexts of teaching. So it's interesting that we can learn a little bit not only of our emotions, but how our emotions develop in our workplace. Yes, how do emotions affect what I do as a teacher? So let me tell you a little bit about this study. What I did, because I live in Mexico, was to try to analyze some of the aspects of Mexican language teachers. But in the end, we're all human beings, so I'm pretty sure that the results are going to resound with experiences that you have lived yourself. So what did I do? I tried to describe the effects of English language teachers in their identity, on their values, their mental and emotional health, based on their interactions with the social and relational context of their profession. Meaning, yes, strictly speaking, how everything that was not teaching was affecting the teachers. And it was a qualitative study. It was done with interviews, narratives with 12 men and women from ages 25 to 65 years old that were teaching English in Mexico in the year 2019. The study came out in 2020. So the study was done with public and private primary schools in Mexico City. And the factors that we considered were, what are the emotional ecologies of teachers, meaning what are the places in which emotions, yes, are handled for teachers. So I found 3 emotional ecologies of teachers. The first one being their identity. So I considered the vocational identity of teachers, their professional identity, their values, their morals, their beliefs, their motivation and professional development, their self-esteem, everything that is about who I am as a teacher. Then we considered also the mental and emotional world of the teacher, their internal tools to handle emotions, emotional intelligence, internal and external locus control, and their mental and emotional health. their perceived stress and burnout. And of course, we had to factor in everything that was the social and relational factors in their teaching. So for this specific purpose, I took the socio-linguistical factors in Mexico City and the primary education systems and the school actors, meaning the parents and the owners of schools, as long as principals. The primary education systems, even though we're all gathered here from different parts of the world, which is something amazing that technology can help us with. And I know that this specific factors may not be exactly what you live in your day by day. It's interesting because I am sure that at least one of these problems has been shared by you in your everyday teaching. So these were the characteristics, right? We took into consideration what were the programs of language teaching at that time, what kind of training teachers received, what was the school's budget, the teacher's salary. All of these are relational factors. All of these have an effect on how teachers perceive their professional development. And so what are some of the results that we found? The main result that we found is that there was conflict in the different emotional ecologies of teachers. There was a big conflict between the programs, the training, the school budget, the parents' expectations, everything that had to do with the social factors of teaching was in conflict with the perception, the values, the motivation of the teachers. Yeah, so basically the external factors were in conflict with the internal factors of teachers. How I perceive myself as a teacher, what I want to do in education, what is my motivation with teaching does not correspond with what is expected of me, with what I have the money to do, with what the parents and the teachers are telling me to do. So that was what we found was a big conflict. More specifically, we found that there were social inequalities that affected the school's infrastructure and the class planning. Yes, there is always something about there is not enough money for you to do this kind of activity. There is not enough classrooms for you to keep the children probably in all of their chairs. Yes, that was one big thing, and all because of budget. No, it's a budget thing. No, and that causes that our class planning suffers a little bit. Stress and frustration were the biggest emotional threats for identity due to social and relational factors. There were conflicts between parents and teachers. Okay, so there's a typical parent that wants to tell you how to teach, right? They want to tell you how to do your work and they have no academic preparation. There are also parents that don't really understand the relevance of your subject to their children's education, and they try to minimize what you're doing. There are other parents who are overprotecting the children and discredit the teacher's version of conflicts. Yes, all of these things happen. There's also specifically in public schools, meaning schools that were paid for by the government, there is a distancing between teachers and principals, because one thing is what happens in the classroom, and the other thing is how the owners of schools, the principals of schools, don't really understand what is going on in the classroom because they have to deal with the logistics of everything. And there is a lot of distance between what I am telling my boss as a teacher that needs to be done and what the principal understands or doesn't want to understand, and that doesn't help to create a better school environment. So we discovered that the main reason that language teachers remain in their job is motivation. Their internal motivation, but this one is constantly tested by context and their own emotions. So here are some quotes of teachers that told us everything that had to do with stress, with preoccupation, with everything. So one that had to do with the socio-political factors. We don't have the proper furniture or materials that work properly, like speakers. I've had to bring my own. Some time ago, we had computers and digital boards, but they almost immediately broke and they never came to fix them. Because of their own economical situations, I can't, everyone can't hear that they bring notebooks every day. The girl doesn't have colored pencils, she doesn't have scissors, she doesn't bring glue stick, but they have to choose that between buying some material for their class or something to eat at recess, right? So there are a lot of factors that are out of our control that have to do with social situations, basically social inequality. There are also problems that have to do with the parents and principals' expectations. They say, parents feel the power to demand you a lot of things. It's hard to make them understand how children learn nowadays because they used to learning with different methods. Sometimes parents attend school meetings just to complain. Okay, and this one cracked me up. I'm prepared and I know what I'm doing. Don't expect me to teach their child after an 1800s method. That was really funny, because that's a lot of how some people learned. In schools that are private schools, yes, that they are not paid by the government, but they are like a private initiative. Competition is something that is very important. Because it gives them like a competitive environment to interact with this kind of thing. So although it's not a value that the school officially promotes, competition is intrinsic in everything. Yes, teachers don't like competition because the way that the school manages it, they give special reward cards for excellence in academic development. And as a teacher, you suffer because you would rather give this to kids that give their best effort. Not to the kids that are more competitive or the kids that have straight A's or just 100 in all their tests, but the ones that make a big effort. Sometimes you want to do that, but the school doesn't let you. Then we have some sort of conflicts with teachers and their relations to students, right? So this teacher said last week, a girl said that I hurt her, that I grabbed her arm too hard. I buried my nails into her. So they called me to the principal's office and they asked what happened. And it was like 3 or 4 days before the girl admitted that she had lied. And I was the one who had to apologize. They didn't tell anything to me. And there was a moment where I was like, okay, this is over. I'm just done, right? So all of these factors affect teachers' identity. They take away their motivation. And some of the teachers even admitted over time, it takes away this human side of teaching. The demands and the lack of tolerance feels dehumanizing. It doesn't help that you start being so stressed out. You're frustrated, you're annoyed. You might want to shout to your coworkers about it, but in the end, you just do it because it's your job. And you just have to. You just get annoyed for a moment and then try to move on. So I don't want to be demoralizing you guys, because this is quite the opposite, no? But I just wanted to put into perspective that there is a lot of invisible things that teachers have to go through. There's an invisible side of teaching that we all live as teachers, but we don't really talk about because it's very demoralizing. And so here we come with the silver lining. What is what was the positive side of the research that we did? Well, there was some interesting things about the teachers' values and beliefs. So there were some teachers that had, because of the teachers' demand, the school's demands or the parents' demands, they had to change their methods. They had to change their techniques because of the relational factors. So to avoid problems at work, you had to change a little bit of the class, how you did it. But their core values, their central values, their vocational identity as teachers, that remained the same. So throughout the years, teachers might have changed the techniques and the methods that they do things, but in essence, the heart of teaching, their vocational identity stayed the same. Trust and motivation diminishes, of course, with external factors in each case. Each case is different, and we all as teachers have had different problems, in situations. We suffer in the workplace, and the trust and motivation diminishes. But in some cases, not everyone, but in some cases, resilience was developed. And with resilience, I mean the ability to overcome and be strong about the different kinds of problems. So here are some of those declarations from teachers. The teachers' values and beliefs from those that had developed the resilience, different perspectives on how they lived what they lived. So some teachers said, I believe the key to a better world is education. And that's why I wake up at 5:30 every morning. Not only academic education, we need a holistic education that helps them understand the world, adapt, and improve it. I want to improve my country. I want to teach my pupils that they can change this country for good, even if their family doesn't think the same way. Being a teacher is one of the most relevant jobs in the world. Maybe they won't learn any English, but they can learn more about their attitude toward life, and you can make them feel appreciated. So all of these declarations, all of these quotes that I took from these teachers are significant in the sense that they show that they have what we call emotional intelligence. Okay, we all live in different countries. We all have different social situations. However, we are all human. We have all experienced difficult hardships, and we can all develop emotional intelligence. Basically, emotional intelligence is the understanding of how we evaluate the beliefs that trigger our emotions. We as human beings are capable of recognizing ideas and adapting them so that we don't feel so affected by them. When we develop emotional intelligence, we understand that the ideas that we have at one point in our lives are not the same ideas that we had 10 years ago. And understanding that and adapting to the circumstances of teaching, of context, helps me be more resilient, helps me not only to be a better teacher, but to be a better version of myself as a human being. And sure, it's very nice every now and then to find a nice quote on Facebook on how education will change the world, and a good pat in the back from a colleague and all of that is great and good and makes me smile. However, nice phrases and motivation, just looking at education is the best thing in the world and one pencil, one book can change our society. That's not enough. It's not enough to just read lovely phrases on the internet. The true work is within ourselves. It doesn't matter the context. We can be able to develop our internal tools so that the external factors are not so significantly attacking us, or that we feel or we perceive that we are being attacked by them. So how can we develop this emotional intelligence? How can we be better prepared to deal with the everyday situations that happen to us as teachers? Well, give me 1 second here. All right. So what happens when I deal with a problem normally in the classroom? Let's imagine that I am called into the office of the principal because my children are not doing so well in my subject, and I had a lot of people who failed. And so I am scolded by the teacher, I'm scolded by the principal that something needs to be done, something needs to improve. Okay, and I get angry. I get angry because they are telling me that I'm doing my job wrong, and I become frustrated. So the first thing that I do is that I become aware of the emotion, right? I notice that I am angry and I decide to do something about it. I find the cause. What is the cause? Well, I see that the cause that I am being scolded is because my kids have been reckless this week. Okay. It's not my fault. This didn't happen because of me, and I need to find the cause. And after I figure out the cause in my mind, I'm like, okay, these kids have been really restless. Okay. They have been really restless, and that's why they didn't study. And so something has to be done. I have to take control of the situation. That's how I normally handle problems. Okay. And my way to take control of the situation is to change it. How do I take control of the situation? I change the situation. I try to change everything. So I go into the classroom and I tell my kids, I go and I take my emotion and I blast it into them. You know what? From now on, you are going to be reading not one chapter every week, but 2 chapters until you learn how to do this, because this needs to be changed. And now you are going to be, you need to do this better. Okay, you need to change, you need to do this better. So that's how it's going to happen. Normally, yes, when we have problems at work, some teachers, I'm not saying everyone, but some teachers, that is the way that they interact. Okay, that is the way that they try to solve problems. But what we're not doing is connecting with the students. We're identifying what is our emotion, but we're not really connecting with that emotion. And that connection is what we call empathy, which is the title of this whole talk. What is connection? What is empathy? Let's take a look at a short video. It's a beautiful video. It's very short, but I need to share my audio as well. Sorry. So it's very short, but it's actually very significant on how we can understand what empathy is. If you don't hear the video, just let me know, okay?
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions, where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so it's interesting, isn't it? Empathy is connecting with the other. All right. Empathy is not trying to solve the other people's problems, it's not sympathy. Sometimes we try to help others by being sympathetic, but not empathetic. Right. And we try sometimes because we don't know how to interact very well with others, we are a little bit more like the deer than we are like the bear. And when students come into our classrooms and tell us about a problem, we try to solve it for them, or we try to tell them, well, at least you have this, at least you have this. Okay. No, oh, teacher, I didn't, my parents are having problems at home, especially with little kids, that they're very honest and they come and tell you what's going on in their lives. And you come and, well, at least you have a house, at least you have food. And I'm not saying that we should not tell them to be grateful, but being empathetic is not about really answering back, as it's about understanding, connecting with something in ourselves that is more about what they are feeling, and active listening. Yes, an insight to see really what is going on inside of their own understanding. So when we are returning to our example of me being scolded by the principal, yes, so I become aware of the emotion. I'm angry, okay? And I find the cause, and the cause there is that the children are being reckless. So that is my mental understanding. But why are they being reckless? That is the connection, trying to understand, listening to what they have to say. Why are they reckless? Are they angry themselves? Do they have like a specific problem themselves? I don't know if we're allowed to take questions right now, Mr. Ebenezer, because I see a couple of hands being raised, or should I wait until the end? Well, anyway, we can answer some questions at the end. But anyway, so it's not only important to locate rationally where my emotion lies or what is the source of my emotion, but to actually connect with what is happening. Connecting with that emotion means that I will understand better what is happening. Okay, so if I connect with the fact that probably the reckless children, yes, they're having problems at home. Maybe their parents are getting a divorce. Maybe they are running out on money to pay their rent. Okay, I connect. I can't do anything about it, but I understand a little bit better what is going on. And that is why, okay, that is why my students are being reckless. Okay, and after I connect not only rationally but emotionally, then I can accept the emotion. Before I can take control of the situation, not only feeling the emotion and understanding where the emotion comes from, I have to accept the emotion, accept the situation. And what is to accept the situation? To accept the situation doesn't mean to give up and say, oh, okay, then it is what it is, and I can't do anything about it. Or accepting the emotion doesn't mean to admit defeat. Okay? Accepting the emotion means that we become aware of what is happening. Yes. And we are trying to give a little bit of distance from it. Okay. So accepting the emotion means that I become a little bit neutral about it. I am having all of these emotions in me, but I am not the emotion. Okay. I am not the emotion that is in me. I just have it in me for a little while. Okay. A little bit of objectivity. Okay. So instead of thinking about me and thinking, oh my goodness, and now I'm the one that has problems, and why does this happen to me? And why does all my children have to be the ones that have all of these crazy parents? And so that is acting subjectively. Acting objectively would be to think, okay, well, I do live in a country that has this kind of problems. And I am sure that I'm not the only person in the planet that has been scolded by their superior, or I am not the only person in the planet that has teachers, that has students that have problems at home. Okay, so distancing yourself a little bit from the problem, looking at it from a broader perspective, not looking at it from, I am living this, but like, this is happening, and it happens not only to me, it happens to other people. And that would be to get a little bit more of objectivity. And to get neutrality would be to observe the situation from a place of non-judgment. Okay? It's very hard to not judge, especially when we are teachers, because we are constantly talking to each other about different situations. When you have, there is always that little boy or girl that is the the scoundrel of the class, and some teachers will say, little Marcus, little Marcus gave me a lot of problems last year. Okay, so if you actually do teach him, be careful. He is terrible. He doesn't pay attention. He doesn't listen. And we receive that judgment. And when we receive little Marcus in the classroom, we receive that little boy or that little girl with judgment, that the minute that person starts behaving in a not perfect manner, we become like, oh, why did this have to happen to me? Why did I have to get the bad kid? Okay, that is not neutrality. That is judgment. We're judging another person based on what somebody else told us. But if we try to make an effort and we say to our coworkers, you know what, I want to wait until I know this person myself. And that applies for situations as well. Okay, if I try to get a neutral perspective on what happens to me, on my problems, on the situations that happen in my work, and I manage to be objective and neutral, or at least try to do it, everything that happens to me, I am able to do it without feeling personally affected. Okay, things are going to happen in life. Okay, life is going to happen, and life doesn't happen just to me. It happens to many different people. And the more that we accept that, and we get a little bit of emotional, subjective distancing from it, we get to be acceptant of the situation. Yeah, so like I said before, acceptance doesn't mean admitting defeat. It means acknowledging that the situation is there, that the emotion is in me, but that I am not that situation. I am not that emotion only. The situation will pass, the emotion will pass, and I can learn to look at it from a different perspective. So if I become aware of the emotion and I find a cause for that emotion, I understand where it comes from, I connect with the situation and I accept it. Okay, now I accept that in my original example, okay, so I accept that these kids have been having problems at home. And I acknowledge that. I recognize there is nothing I can do to change that situation at home. And I have to accept the fact that they are going to be reckless and that they are going to be maybe very involuntarily with a lot of energy during the class. I cannot control that, okay? So I accept the situation, but here is the last part. I cannot take control by changing the situation and saying, okay, well, everybody has to be quiet and be and do everything that I say, because there are some causes that are provoking everything that I cannot control. So how do I take control of this situation? Because I'm the teacher. I have to have some sort of management of everything that is happening. So instead of changing the situation, I have to change my view on the situation. I cannot change what is going on outside of my classroom. I can't even change the fact that my children are sad or that I am actually feeling frustrated about it. I can change my frustration into acceptance. Accepting the things that I have as they are gives me a lot more peace of mind than trying to actually change the situation. because in the end, trying to change the situation is just going to be effortless. We are not going to be able to change anything. However, what we can control and what we can't control is developing emotional intelligence, is developing empathy, not only to others, but to ourselves. You know, we are very, very good at having empathy and having emotional intelligence and teaching that to our students. Have you ever had this situation in which, you had a student that was late for, for a test, and they come and tell you, oh, I'm sorry, teacher, but the bus was late and I woke up late and I had to run here, but then I forgot my pencil, so I had to ask for my friend, and he gave it to me, but then I fell down. Please let me take the test. And you're like, no, sorry. Okay, life happens, sweetie. Okay, come prepared for next time. Okay, and you try with that attitude to explain to your student that sometimes things happen in life and you just have to be prepared to accept that today you cannot take the test because these were the rules, and now you cannot take the test. This that we're so good at explaining to our students, that life happens and sometimes we have to accept things that come in life. Sometimes we are kind of not so good dealing with that ourselves, right? Accepting life as it is. And when we have problems, we want to control everything and we want to try to change everything instead of just accepting that things are not going to change. And the only thing that I can change is how I view the situation. So by quoting a Stoic philosopher of ancient Greece, Epictetus, it's not really what happens to us, but what we think about what happens to us that affects us. So it's very interesting how we are today gathered people from Ghana, from Pakistan, from Lebanon, from Peru, from Mexico. And at some point, this phrase resounds with us because we all live in different contexts with different problems, difficult political, social, economical situations. But I am sure that we all have problems. That is for sure. The only thing that really is the same for all of us is that we can all develop this emotional resilience, this emotional intelligence. We can develop empathy to understanding others and also to understanding ourselves. So in order for us to be empathetic towards others and to ourselves, there are some practical things that I wanted to share with you that we can do. So if we look at our students and peers metaphorical backpack, what are some of the tools that we can get from empathy and emotional intelligence? Accepting reality as it is. There are going to be some kids that never bring the material because they don't have money at home. And I can't control that. And that is okay. I just have to deal with what I have. Don't make assumptions or judge others. If I come with other teachers that tell me their perspective on other students, try to be as neutral as possible. Because if you come with judgment and then the kid comes and you reinforce that judgment, it's not going to be fair for the others. The same thing happens with peers, no? Let's let go of our unrealistic expectations. I am not saying don't try to make them better or don't try to make them try their best, but sometimes we are very hard and we are not adapting to the circumstances. Sometimes all we need is understanding how the other is perceiving the situation in order to change their own view on the situation. Okay, you have to let go of unrealistic expectations based on what you lived. You have to understand a little bit what the other lives. And this also goes for ourselves. We have some unrealistic expectations for ourselves because we are teachers. We want to make a difference in the world, and that's great. However, we have to change the world, we have to live in the world. We have to accept the world that we live in and the characteristics of that world. And sometimes we are too hard on ourselves and what we expect from ourselves. So for that, let's take a look at some of the things that we as teachers can do to develop our own empathy. We have to separate work and home time. Sometimes, if not always, we take the work at home and we diminish taking care of ourselves. Yeah, so we don't exercise and we don't cook what the healthy food that we should, because we always have extra work to do because we want to do our best for our students, and that's good. But we are never going to be as great teachers as we think if we don't take care of ourselves. If we are always tired, if we're always angry, if we don't have time to rest and to understand our emotions and to even just be silent for a few minutes a day and understand what is going on within ourselves, how on earth are we going to be a good version for the students? So we have to try to perform activities that are not related to school, hobbies, sports, some form of art. There are even some techniques that are starting to be very fashionable now that are like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, all of these connecting activities that help me be silent in the world and talking to myself, talking and understanding my emotions. That is good. Yes, those are things that help me deal a little bit better with the circumstances outside my own classroom. Every now and then, it's important that we review our beliefs. Yes, that we check if the expectations that I had from myself or from others from 10 years ago are still the same ones that we have now. Especially with new technology, we want our students to still be 50 minutes just reading a book or staying quiet all the time. And what we see in the world is we have a context that we can't even do that ourselves. No, right now, I know that there are some people that are looking at their notifications from WhatsApp, and yes, you are listening to me, but you're also checking your social, and you're probably thinking, oops, what am I going to be doing for lunch today? And if we can't do it ourselves, why on earth do we expect it from others? No, so we should review that those beliefs that we were instilled from when we were students and that it worked from us, maybe they're not the same that we should be trying to promote on others because the world has changed. And our beliefs about the world, if they are not matching with what we expect, and then the world is different, we're going to have that conflict again from our values, from our beliefs, and what is actually going on out there. So being aware of that the world out there has changed also helps me to understand that. And of course, to do that, to understand the world and to accept that the world has changed, I want to be part of that world. And to be part of that world, I need to understand how I interact with my emotions. Okay, if I know what my emotions are, that I understand, okay, I try to get in touch with my emotions, but also change is hard for me. Change is hard for me, so I will take baby steps. That is knowing your emotions. Okay, you cannot change from one day to the other just, okay, yes, now I'm going to be a super compassionate teacher and I'm going to be happy every day. No, it's little by little. Getting to know yourself and how you deal with sadness, how you deal with anger, how you deal with all the things that happen to you. It's a basic part of developing emotional intelligence. So before anything else, before we can do better work plans or develop our skills for the 21st century, before we go to our million-hour meetings with peers, with colleagues, before anything, you have to understand what is going on inside yourself. Okay? Understanding, becoming aware of our emotions helps me understand what is going on with me. And when we connect with that, okay, when we connect with that emotion and we accept it, then I can take control of my own life, meaning that I can change my view on the situation. So if I work not only with my head, but also with my heart, I can actually give with my hands to others. The best teachers are the ones that change their minds. The best teachers are not going to be the ones that have the best prepared lessons or that they are drilling their children constantly to do better. They're going to be the ones that are adapting and changing their minds and constantly trying to understand how the world, and how the external world and how our inner world, the world inside ourselves, need to be in harmony. Okay. And the only way that I can teach them how to be in harmony is not changing the world, because there are some big things around the world that I can't change myself, but I can change the perspective on how I view the world. And if I change internally, then I can be in harmony with the world outside. And my students will notice that, even if I don't say it. Okay. It's a change of perception, not a change in actions. It's a change of how I see before I act. And so the best teachers will be the ones that change their minds. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gina. What an awesome presentation that was.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has a question that you would like to ask or a comment.
Okay, so that takes us to the open forum. Let's see if we have some questions.
Mm-hmm.
So let me stop sharing. All right, so if you have any question, please indicate in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and you'll be unmuted. Do we have some questions in the chat box?
Nicholas Kruma.
Okay, Nicholas. All right, kindly unmute yourself.
All right, please, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, sure.
All right. Okay, first of all, thank you for organizing this workshop. I've really benefited from it. And also, thanks to Madam Gina and Mr. Ebenezer. God richly bless you. Keep up with this good work. Please, thank you.
All right, thank you, Nicholas. Okay, we have some hands up. Madam Helen.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this insightful presentation. What I missed was the technique of mindfulness. If you can please explain for us. Thank you.
Sure. Mindfulness is a technique that has been developed in the last probably 20 or 30 years. It's been called mindfulness, and it actually has its roots in the Buddhist religion. So mindfulness is a technique that you can look it up in many, many ways. And it is a way that has helped connecting with our emotions by focusing with mental exercises. So basically on mindfulness, what you can do is that you will have guided meditations. Okay, you focus on what I try to sometimes I teach mindfulness to my students, and one of the core things of mindfulness is the monkey mind. So you imagine that your mind is a little bit like a monkey jumping from one tree to the other, right? So you have the monkey mind, because in your mind you're always thinking, oh, just like I said a little bit earlier, no, oh, like, oh, I'm going to check my social media, oops, a message arrived and I have to prepare lunch. Oh, but the teacher is still speaking, so what am I going to be doing next? Oh, the teacher is still speaking, I have to finish my work. So that is the monkey mind. Yes, this thing that our mind does, because our mind needs to think, right? Our mind needs to think things, and we get anxious because we need to prepare our food, and we get excited because we are listening to a conference, but we are also getting nervous because I still haven't finished grading what I have to grade. So mindfulness training, what does is to first, much like emotional intelligence, become aware of everything that is going on in my mind. And I become aware of that by trying to just focus on one thing at a time. Imagine that you are trying to relax, you're trying to just focus on breathing. So if I tell you right now, okay, just try to focus on breathing, and we stay quiet for a minute, okay? Try to just focus on the air that goes out and in of your body. Just focus on that. We may be able to do it for a few seconds, but in about 10 seconds, another thought is going to come into our mind. No? And that kind of resistance of our own mind applies to emotions as well. So with mindfulness, we learn how to perceive our mind as a sky, and all of the thoughts and all of the emotions like passing clouds. Okay, because sometimes I get very fixated on one feeling or on one thought. Okay, and I get myself into that feeling, into that emotion, and instead of distancing myself, okay, I just get there, and I am like circular thinking all day long, and I can't break free of it. So mindfulness is a technique that helps me train my mind. It's like training the monkey of my mind. Okay. So instead of the monkey being free to jump from one thought or one feeling from the other, I try to train my mind to focus on what it needs to focus, to distance from what it needs to distance. So there are a lot of courses on mindfulness. We can later have a talk about that. If you want mindfulness for teachers, that would also be a good talk to have. But that's basically what mindfulness is.
All right, thank you, Ms. Gina. We'll go to Rukaya, but before we go to Rukaya, there's a question in the chat box from Mr. Jacob. He says, please, can students' consistent level of negative resistance affect teachers' empathy towards them?
Oh, yes, definitely. So especially with teenagers, now, especially teenagers that are dealing with a lot of emotions and hormones, they experience a lot of negative resistance, to accept anything that we are telling them, and of course that affects. However, it's not impossible to connect with a student that has a negative resistance, and the principle is still the same. We have to try to figure out why are they being resistant. Yes, like identify the emotion. Is it anger or is it just boredom? And it's a two-part job, no? So why are they being resistant? Are they being resistant because I am telling them things that they don't agree with? Okay, maybe I am, and that is the nitty-bitty part of teaching. No, it's you have to try different ways until you connect with them. Okay, so maybe they will not connect with a movie. Maybe they will connect with a YouTuber that they saw. No, so you instead of bringing a movie that you like to the classroom, bring something that they will like. Okay. Yeah, 10, 15 years ago, if a teacher brought a movie to the classroom, it was the cool teacher, right? Because it meant that you just had to relax and watch the movie. But now, maybe it's not so much a movie, but watching a few TikToks with them, engaging into what they like. Negative resistance will always be there because people can't identify with what you're saying. So the way that negative resistance can be turned over is by trying to see how to connect with them. Before trying to make students learn or understand, you have to open that channel of communication. Learning is not going to happen if communication is not open. Okay, so you should try to think, how are they going to connect with you? How you are going to connect with them? What do they find pleasing? What do they find entertaining? And through there, because I'm sure that you're all brilliant teachers, through there, start engaging into conversation. Make a topic that is specific to them. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we have a question from one of our participants on YouTube, Salman. Person is asking, is it not possible to implement CLT in AFL context even without empathy? Is it not possible to implement CLT in EFL context even without empathy? So I'm sure the person is referring to communicative language teaching.
Okay, can you one more time repeat the question, please?
I'm trying to, yes. Maybe he means, is it possible to implement CLT in EFL context even without empathy? Yes, I'm sure that's what the person means.
Okay, I'm sure that communicative language teaching, I love it because, of course, you try to actively engage. So I think that empathy is not something that you that you put on your lesson plan. Okay, it's not something that you would say, okay, well, today from 10 to 10:20, I'm going to be empathetic, and then we're going to begin our class, right? So empathy, it's something that I'm sure it's already in communicative language teaching and even in traditional language teaching. Empathy is not something that depends on the method or the technique that you use for teaching. Empathy is a human quality, okay, of putting yourself on the other person's shoes. I used to work in a very traditional school. I didn't have the opportunity to work with communicative language teaching as much as I would have liked. And I had to, in spite of the very rigid system that I used to be at, I had to be able to communicate with students understanding that situation. Yes, because sometimes we do get to choose our methodology of teaching, but sometimes we don't. Okay, so if you are teaching with CLT, if you're teaching in a more traditional way, if you're teaching with Montessori, if you're teaching with whatever aspect or whatever methodology of teaching, the important thing is that you connect. Okay, if you connect, any methodology of teaching will work if your connection to the students is genuine, if your interest in what is happening with their lives and your interest in them wanting to learn is there. Because children are not aware of what you're telling them. Okay, children are not aware of the methodology that you're telling them, that you're using. If you're using a traditional, if you're using a more modern, they are aware of your intentions to them. They are aware if they're enjoying it. They are aware of what they receive, but they're not aware of the theoretical part. So whatever methodology that you use, you can work empathy in it, because empathy is something that is what we all want. We all want to be heard and understood, and we all want to connect. It's an inherently human quality. So anything that you use with empathy will be fine.
Okay, let's go to Rukaya. Rukaya, please unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear my voice?
Sure, yes, we can.
I have a question from, can I?
All right, please go ahead with your question.
Sure.
Okay. I have a question that as Miss Gina just told us that stuck in different situations, and we are variety of dilemmas and conflicts, and instead of these dilemmas, teachers work with inner or external conflicts. I must say that we have inner bickerings, so we have to go on. We have to about the situation. Is there any flow chart that we can design for ourselves? Any checklist we can do on daily basis? What should be the criteria? I just want to know that. For example, if I'm going to prepare a class, I have to just note down certain things on my notebook, and I have to prepare that list that I have to do these things like a memorization. So I just need to know about this to overcome our inner bickering, our conflicts and dilemmas. Can we have any techniques that we should note down on any notebook, or we should note down in a questionnaire form, or we should prepare any flow chart or any memorization list that being a teacher I have to do this to control my inner conflicts or external conflicts and dilemma like this. Thank you.
That's a very interesting question. Thank you. Let me see if I understood correctly because the communication was a little bit off. But I believe your question is how can I better prepare for the problems that might arise in the future, and if there is like a to-do list that I should have before before anything happens. Is that your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, it's a very interesting question because if there is a list, I would like to know it to be able to prepare for life in advance. It's very interesting because, as you all know, life is unexpected. No, life is not going to come with all the answers and all the questions beforehand. How do we prepare for life? How do we get ready for everything that is going to happen to us, not only in the classroom, but in life? Well, the only thing that we can do is to always keep, what I would say is not like a specific to-do list, as in if I don't want to say if you meditate 20 minutes every day and if you do this, everything is going to be solved for you, because every person is a whole world in itself. So we don't know the problems that we're going to have in the classroom. We don't know the situations that are going to arise at our workplace, much like we don't know what is going to happen to our lives in the next 5 years, in the next 20 days. The only certain thing about life is that it's unexpected. So my advice would be the advice from empathy and from trying to use emotional intelligence is don't judge. Okay, it's practice your non-judgment every day. Not only when the big things come, but try to practice your non-judgment. Try to spend time with yourself, because sometimes we don't know how to react to our emotions because we don't spend time with them. We try to block them. We try to deny them. We are too busy to deal with it. Yes, we're too busy to deal with anger. We're too busy to deal with sadness, because how am I going to be sad about, I don't know, my dog dying if I have a million things of work to do? I'll be sad later and later and later and later. And we don't get used to understanding how we react with feelings. So when a big problem comes, we don't know how to interact with it because we haven't practiced. So the only thing that I would suggest in order to deal with the difficult things in life is to prepare by talking to yourself more. Understanding how you deal with situations is a large part of understanding how the emotions that you feel travel through your body. Understanding how your body reacts to emotions. When you get angry, do you get gastritis? Do you start biting your nails? Do you eat more? Do you eat less? Do you start screaming at everybody? Perhaps start working on that. Yeah, start working on yourselves, and little by little, the problems outside you will start being able to deal with them in a more calm, serene manner. That's the only thing that I would say. There's not a to-do list that helps me deal better with life. It's preparation, is constantly being aware of the world around me and that life changes. And it's also accepting, more or less accepting, because trying to prepare for everything in advance is not accepting what is going to happen. It's trying to control everything. And once again, I can't control anything. So the first part would be, there is not a to-do list. The only thing that we can do is to try to work on ourselves little by little every day. Mhm.
Okay, Ms. Gina, we still have some questions coming from YouTube.
Okay.
And let me read them out. One says, when we design syllabus, this is actually coming from Salman. It says, when we design syllabus, keeping in view student-oriented learning, that we want them to be clear enough of each concept. Shall we call it empathy because we are empathetic? I don't know if you got a question.
Yes, I got it. I think it would be, yes, it's empathetic because we are trying to help them. No, we are thinking of how others feel. We're trying to connect with them. We're trying to make them understand and deal with their emotions and with their understanding in a way that is going to be related to their own experience. So yes, if we made lesson planning based on student learning, that's it's crazy how they come up nowadays with these terms of student-oriented learning. Well, shouldn't that be the learning in the first place? Like, it's crazy that there is a way of teaching that is not student oriented. No, everything should be to the student. If I'm a teacher, I have to think about the student. So yes, definitely student oriented learning is dealt with empathy. No, however, we do have to be like really honest, and we have to try to connect in a genuine way, because sometimes I think that I'm doing a student oriented class and I prepare something that would be what I think the student will enjoy. And when I get them presented to the classroom, the children are not engaged. And I am being very stubborn, and I said, but this is for you, and I planned this for you. Okay. And I saw that children and teenagers like this, and I am not thinking about them. I'm thinking about what I think they will like. Okay. So student oriented and empathy is to, yes, it can be, but we have to think about the other, not how I perceive that they're going to like it. We have to connect with the other person. We have to see their faces, watch my own reactions, their own reactions. Okay, to connect, to genuinely connect with the other is to let go of my barriers, to let my walls down. Okay.
Okay, let's go to Mr. Samuel Kwesi Connie. Please unmute yourself.
Yes. Please, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ebenezer. Ms. Gina.
Yes.
Please, my question is, in dealing with students in the classroom, how impactful and contagious is this concept of emotional intelligence? I mean, how does it affect, how does it impact our students as we try to practically exhibit emotional intelligence in our classroom?
It's I can only speak from my personal experience. I'm sure there are numbers out there, but emotional intelligence has effects not only on students but also on teachers. When I try to connect with the others and when I try to connect myself, it has an immediate impact in students' performance. I remember that when I started teaching, you know, that there's a tradition of the teacher standing outside of the classroom, making his or her presence known and saying, "Good morning, students." And everyone had to stand up and say, "Good morning, teacher." And you could hear their tired voices just saying your name, because they know that that's what they have to do. And the teacher does it in a tired voice, and the students do it in a tired voice. And then you do it because that's the tradition and that's the way that things are done. And then you start your class. When I became a teacher, I tried to not do that. Okay, I tried to, because I didn't want students to be like really bored to death of what I did. And when I entered the classroom, my presence was not known until 10 minutes later, because everyone was doing their own thing. So what I tried to implement was that when I walked into the classroom and I actually did this small ritual of saying good morning, I did it with the intention of really wishing them a good morning. You know, it sounds silly, but just paying attention and actually listening to them and saying, "Hey, good morning. How are you? I know that you went on a road trip last week, or I know that you had to do a little play for your parents, or how was Halloween, or how was your Christmas vacation?" Like, really be interested in them. Not just be interested in what you have to give and that you just have 45 minutes before the class finishes. And it's like, "Okay, good morning. Everybody take out your notebook because we have to do this." That's just thinking about yourself. Okay. And I'm not saying that that will not work, but it works better with performance and with engagement, especially with children that are not the overachievers. You know, the good students are always going to be good. It doesn't matter what kind of class you give them, because they have their own internal motivation. But with children and with students that have external factors that they are dealing with at home, these extra things of actually asking them, "How was your day? Hey, I knew that you had a fight with your sister. Is everything better now? How are you today?" Okay, to just, it's not about methodology. It's just to actually want to be interested in what happens outside their lives, not only to focus on what you are telling them. Active communication, empathy, connection with the other. I can tell you from experience that when you actually do that, they actually enjoy your class and they look forward to it, because in their mind, yes, they start relating and connecting positive emotions to what you are teaching. You're helping their brain understand that language teaching is something that can be about emotion, not only about grammar or not only about vocabulary, but you make them feel good. You make them feel seen in the classroom. You make them feel understood. Okay, and if you do that with your students, maybe they're not like completely conscious that you're doing that, but they feel it. They feel seen, they feel understood. And because they feel that way, their natural response is going to pay attention to you. Okay? And even if they're the reckless people in the classroom, that they will feel connected to you. Okay? And even if their academic achievement is not the best and they are still not getting the 100 on their grades, I don't know what the grading system is there in Africa, but even if they're not the top students, by feeling connected to you in the future, they will have a good memory of their language teacher. They won't have a bad memory, and that possibly when they are ready to learn will help them, because they won't have this impediment of, "Oh my goodness, language teaching is terrible because my teacher was awful. He or she just wanted me to pay attention and I was going through a bad time." You don't know what any of your students is really going through in life. So the only thing that you can do is actually be empathetic and wish for the best. So I would say from personal experience that empathy and emotional intelligence has maybe not immediate, but you start noticing from 2 or 3 weeks after you start actively listening to them in their development, in their engagement, especially in their engagement in the classroom. Because once you have their attention and once you know that what you're telling them is honest, true, sincere, and connecting, whatever you tell them, they're going to pay attention to, whatever. And then teaching becomes easier because you don't have this barrier of them not wanting to listen to you. Okay. Let me see. All right. I don't know. It's Mr. Solomon. You want to ask something?
Okay, let's go to Mr. Vincent. I think his hand has been up for some time. Hello, Vincent.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. Madam Gina, thank you for this insightful and wonderful presentation. And Iota Ghana, let me also commend our people, especially Akins, for the wonderful organization. Madam Gina, I can assure you that through this your presentation, I've started framing a research topic that I'm going to look at around this emotional issues and how they affect language teachers in the classroom. My question is very simple. I want to know whether there can be an extreme point where the teacher cannot just connect or empathize with some situations in the classroom. And in that case, what happens?
Could you repeat the question? There was a small error of communication.
I want to know, you said you have to try, depending on the situation in your classroom, you need to empathize or connect with your learners or your students. Yes. I'm asking if they can be at a point where what has happened in the classroom is just too much overbearing that you cannot connect or you cannot empathize with the situation in the classroom. Okay.
Got it. Well,
and in that case, what do you do?
Well, sometimes, yes, of course, yes, sometimes, sometimes the students are just not cooperative. And there we have to try to be empathetic, but now to ourselves. Okay. So in that case, when the situation is just too much, when we know that we have tried our best, well, then it is time to take a break because sometimes what we would have to do is accepting. Okay, being empathetic also means to accept. And the reality today is that these kids are not going to pay any attention to me. Not today. Okay, so instead of trying to engage and engage and engage, and this is not working and it's getting frustrating, instead of hurting yourself more, retreat. Okay, I'm not saying give up, because giving up would be to completely abandon the teaching position, right? What I'm saying is that there are some times in which sometimes this kind of energy that I'm trying to implement is not worth it. Okay, it's not worth it for my mental health. So, okay, I just have to accept that the class of today is not what I expected it to be. And you can actually communicate that with students. Okay, you can be, if the channel of communication is open, you can actually go and say, okay, I don't know what is happening. Probably you have things in your own lives. Probably you have problems at home with your parents. And I have been trying this and this and this, but you're not helping. So I'm just going to let you be. And maybe we will try again tomorrow. And that's it. Life is not going to fall apart if one lesson is lost. Because by you communicating your frustration to them might actually make them like, oh, right, we're not being like really good people right now. And some of them will listen. Maybe some of them won't. But by you making your feelings explained to others, okay, instead of just, okay, so the class is canceled and whatever, that's exploding to them. But what is behind that explosion is actually you saying, you know what, I give up for today. We'll try when you are ready. We'll try when you're ready to listen. And that is also not connecting with them, but you making them connect to you because you deserve the attention as well. Okay, and if you are clear and honest about how you have been trying and you're not just receiving that and communicating that you're done for the day, it might make some people like, oh, no, teacher, we will behave. Sometimes they do that. Sometimes they don't. But you just have to accept, okay, that perhaps today is not a good day for them to learn what you want to teach them. And instead of being frustrated and try to teach it anyways, just reserve your energy for when the context and the external world is a little bit better.
All right. I'm sure we'll take the last question from Solomon, and then I'll read 2 more from the chat box. So let's go to Solomon. Hello, Solomon.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akins, and thank you very much, Madam Gina. Madam Gina, please, you shared your experience with us in your earlier presentation that a child reported or said you have hurt her and that you were called in the office. Instead, the truth of the matter came out. And per your presentation, you said that the child didn't apologize. Instead, you did. In that respect, did you sympathize with the child or you empathize with the child?
Okay, this is a very interesting question. Yes, I can hear you perfectly, Solomon. Thank you. Sure. Okay, so in this situation, what I shared with you was not my experience, it was the experience of the teachers that I interviewed. However, what would happen in this kind of situation if that had happened to me? Well, I guess I'm just guessing here, but you can especially when your students are underage, when they are children, and even when they are teenagers, we have to be empathetic in one aspect. These, even though they are very smart, and even though they seem big, they are still people whose minds are developing. Okay, and that they cannot be completely held responsible for what they do. So if the child lies, if the child behaves, misbehaves, they are not entirely responsible for the bad habits that they have acquired. The difficult thing about being a teacher is accepting that many of the negative things from students is something that comes from home. And that those things at home are not solved, and that we are just left to deal with the effects that these children have because their parents are not educating them properly. If that's a thing that might be a good education or bad education, you know? So, and it's something very hard to accept, right? Because the perfect classroom. I used to have a boss that said, you know, my perfect school would be a school of orphans, because I wouldn't have to deal with the parents and all the children would be good, right? And because many of the problems that are generated in the classroom with the children is because they're having problems at home, or that they are they're not being correctly educated. They don't have the construction that they should, and that's very hard for us. So I would actually feel empathy for the children, because all of that behavior, I am not in my situation, I would feel empathy for the kid, because even though it caused me problems at my work, that child is probably suffering more at home than I am. Even if I had a hard time, that child is being neglected by their parents, is being taught how to lie. Outside of the classroom is probably suffering a little bit more than I am. And so I'm going to stop being so demanding of that child, because their life is hard enough as it is. Okay, I'm not saying being a soft person, but trying to understand that other people suffered is helping me not being engaged or even being vindictive to that student who is just understanding how the world works. And that's it.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me see if I can take the last question from the chat box. and then we'll go ahead with this session. I saw a question from Madam Abigail. Let me see if I can. Okay, there's a question coming from Madam Abigail. How do you empathize with technical students who don't have any interest in language at all? So here we are talking about students who don't have any interest in language at all. How do you empathize with them?
Technical students, that makes me think of you know, there was a pedagogist from Brazil who taught people how to read and write, and they didn't want to know how to read and write. Paulo Freire, that's his name, Paulo Freire. And this pedagogist tried to empathize with adults who didn't know how to read and write, and what he taught them was how the words that they would know how to read and write would be connected directly to how they did their work. So technical students would, what I gather, would be students that, why am I going to learn a language if I'm not going to use it? Well, you can start by telling them that language, you know, language is a way to communicate with others. The first idea for language is communication. And not because you're a technical student, but because you're a human being, you need communication. And this world is being increasingly connected to everyone. And language gives an opportunity to communicate with anyone around the world. And the more that you learn, the better that you can communicate with others. It's not about trying to engage them in I am, you are, he is. That's boring even to language teachers. Okay, but the idea behind language teaching is that we are able to communicate with people from other countries, from other cultures. Okay, so technical students are still people. Try to connect with them as people, not as technical students. Okay, we all need connection, we all need communication. So even if they come with you with that kind of argument, okay, well, they're not just technical students, right? That's not all they are in life. They are human beings with interests, with dreams. And for that purpose, English can be relevant and English can be important. And the side note is that their learning of English can also actually help their technical ability, because many of the technical terms are in English. So English can actually help them do their work better.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Gina. I'm sure we've all enjoyed this insightful presentation, and we've taken so much out of this presentation. Before we go, let me see, Miss Juliana, hello. All right, let me go to Miss Juliana so that she will share her remarks on this session. Miss Juliana is the Chief Coordinator for the Research Development Department of IALTA International. Hello, Miss Juliana.
All right, now I can. I wasn't able to open my microphone, so thank you so much, Ebenezer, for it. Yes, I was hearing the whole webinar, almost the whole webinar. I just missed the first 5 minutes. And I congratulate the speaker, Ms. Gina, for this wonderful topic that you brought to us in IALTA Association. I totally agree that teachers must care about the mindfulness to show good empathy for their peers and their students. A class with a good health, talking about mentally issues and other practices, is a good classroom. And that's why we as professionals should first care of ourselves by being self-aware, and after that then to grow that empathy for others to take good decisions in our classrooms. So thank you so much for that. I know that you have answered all the queries that most of the participants here had. I know that some others had some other questions, but they are going to be answered later, maybe when they watch it again, because I know that the minister is going to share this recording for them to take a second look of it and write down other ideas that probably were missed throughout this session. But for it, congratulations. Thank you, Gina, for it. And congratulations to Ayelta Ghana for this wonderful session we had.
Thank you, Ms. Juliana. That was Ms. Juliana, the Chief Coordinator for the Research Development Department. Okay, shall we go to Mr. Alfred Kwetu? Mr. Alfred is the Academic Department Director of Ayelta Ghana. Hello, Mr. Alfred, your closing remarks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, Jenna, thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. We are grateful for making time and energy to come to speak to us. And we have taken a lot of notes, and it's going to help our learners, especially the second language learners of English. And next time when we call upon you, we hope that you respond to us gracefully like we have done today. Thank you very much. We're grateful.
All right, before we go, let me share my screen, and then a very important thing to do, and then an announcement. Okay, so we have this certificate of appreciation going to Ms. Gina Hernandez Amelio for generously sharing her time, effort, and expertise as resource speaker of the 8th International Webinar entitled Empathy Towards English Teachers, awarded this 21st day of January 2023 via Zoom. And this certificate is duly signed by Dr. Niel Arvalo Alcantara, the president of Ayelta International, Dr. Glenn Parilla Cortizano, the academic director of Ayelta International, Ms. Fati Isifu, the president of Ayelta Ghana, Mr. Jacob, the vice president of Ayelta Ghana, and Mr. Alfred Kwetu, the academic director of Ayelta Ghana, and by myself, the ambassador of Ayelta Ghana. Ms. Gina, we are so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for everything.
Right, and our dear participants, this certificate will also be issued to all participants of today's session. Please do well to fill in the evaluation form, and you will get this certificate latest by 7 working days after this session. Thank you all for coming. Okay, so may I take this opportunity to inform you that Ms. Gina is going to be with us once again. Let me share the flyer with you. All right, so on February 25th, we are going to have Ms. Gina with us, and her topic is how to engage students into writing. It's going to be streamed live on our YouTube channel. So, Ms. Gina, we are not done yet.
I'm glad to be back at some point. Yeah, sure.
All right, so this brings us to the end of the session. And I want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Gina, for making time out of your busy schedules and being with us today. And thank you all, our dear participants, Ms. Juliana, Ms. Nemala, the executives of Ayelta Ghana, and all other participants from the various countries. Thank you all for coming. We will meet once again in our next session.
Thank you very much for everything. And thank you everyone for coming. Goodbye.